Graphics. Graphics are the cornerstone of video games, the base of what can become an immersive, vibrant experience, and the thing that breathes life into many of our favorite gaming worlds. And although you'll see the phrase graphics aren't important plastered all over the internet, graphics are also often the selling point not only for new games but for new consoles and PC parts. People might say graphics are unimportant, but everyone still flocks to the latest console showcases to gawk at the individual hairs on Ratchet's ears. When people say that graphics aren't important, what they usually mean is that the level of quality, clarity, and detail, or in other words, graphical fidelity in a game's graphics, does not have a direct impact on how good or how much fun a game will be, especially in terms of gameplay. In other words, graphics won't make or break a game. Technically, good graphics aren't going to make a bad game better somehow, and graphics of a lower fidelity, be that due to age or studio limitations, do not mean that a game will be bad. And sure, while I could somewhat buy into the argument of graphics not being a direct contributor to a game's gameplay, graphics are undeniably important to video games, for better and for worse. While there could be endless discussions of the importance and effects of graphics in gaming, I'm going to be boiling everything down into three main categories in this video: graphical fidelity and art direction, user interface and immersion, and finally, graphics in modern gaming. The age-old question: can it run Crysis? Ever since the inception of video games, development studios have fought and strived to create the most impressive, detailed, and technically advanced graphics on the market. And as long as this battle has gone on, games quickly get overshadowed by one another. Something that might have been considered the pinnacle of gaming 5 or 10 years ago is nowadays generally going to be thought of as outdated. As games keep coming out, the technical boundaries of graphics will continue to be pushed. What effects do graphics like these have on games, whether good or bad, and just how important are technically advanced graphics? Arguably, they aren't. Now, as I said earlier, it would be a blatant lie to say that graphics don't matter at all. Just like if you were reading or writing a story, a good narrative cannot be delivered without a strong sense of setting and world. In the case of video games, graphics are the vessel with which the world and immersion are delivered. However, that does not mean that a game that isn't state-of-the-art graphically cannot depict its world just as well. A game engine that is more modern and takes more processing power has no inherent effect on the visual appeal of a game. Millions of particle effects and sharp textures don't matter if the textures themselves are generic and the visual design of levels is haphazard. For example, Forspoken versus Elden Ring. Both are AAA games from 2022 that have a fantasy setting and are generically pretty similar. But despite Forspoken's flashy marketing and claims to showcase the true power of the PS5, seeing the game in action shows a dull, repetitive, and visually uninspired world. Elden Ring, on the other hand, is bursting from the seams with vibrant and memorable locations set in a thoroughly fleshed out world, and yet Forspoken was marketed and released only for next-gen consoles and is much more demanding on systems to run, while Elden Ring runs perfectly fine on last-generation hardware and is still leagues ahead of Forspoken visually. Now, all of that's not to say high graphical fidelity can't make a game stand out, as it can definitely make a huge difference, evident through games like The Last of Us or Red Dead Redemption 2, but we'll get back to that later. What matters most is not having the most advanced technology. Talented artists can make something impressive on engines that might be considered outdated. Another example here, Half-Life 2 Episode 2, which, to its credit, still looks phenomenal for being a game released in 2007 and was graphically one of the top dogs at the time. Now, here's Black Mesa, which is a fan-made remake of the original Half-Life that officially released in 2020. So, what's the catch here? These games run on the same engine, that being Valve's legendary Source engine. It is true that Black Mesa had an exponentially longer development window compared to Half-Life 2 and had much more advanced technology available during its creation, which is what it owes a lot of this visual upgrade to. But the point is that Black Mesa was able to achieve such a high level of visual allure while continuing to use software that has been out for over a decade, and the impressively low system requirements really reflect that. Without taking full advantage of technology available, it is easy for new game releases to fall into the trap of being resource hungry without actually having the need for those resources to produce an experience of that visual quality. Another issue that arises from this graphics race among developers is the increasing inclusion of unnecessary details that, while impressive, in some cases can actually hinder the gameplay of certain titles. Without proper planning of things like enemy color palettes and contrasts, increasing the visual complexity of a game makes it easier for vital gameplay information to be lost to the player. This is especially the case in the recent decade or so, as games strive to be more cinematic and as a result are going so far as to include god-awful features like motion blur or film grain. If you take a look at Halo 5, for example, you'll see that as a result of there being 20,000 colors and objects and sources of light on the screen at any given time, it's difficult, slightly, to actually see what you're supposed to be shooting at in the first place. Versus Halo 1, where the visual design of enemies is obvious against the levels you're playing through and you know exactly what you need to be doing with just a glance at the screen. Again, infamous Second Son. This game came out around the same time as the PS4 did, and so as a PlayStation exclusive, it really tries to showcase the new console's power. The product is, again, a million flashing lights and particle effects that get in the way of you actually playing the game. Now look at the original Infamous, and just like Halo 1, you can actually tell what's attacking you. Now, at this point it seems like I'm just here bashing on high-end graphics, which is not the point of this video. I like games with realistic, hyper-detailed graphics just as much as the next guy, and as I mentioned earlier, high graphical fidelity can make a huge difference to presentation and immersion factors of a game. And it is exceedingly clear that not every game with technically advanced graphics falls prey to the issues of visual clutter or pointlessly overusing resources as I've been mentioning. So what makes the difference between this and this? This is the part of graphics that really matters, this right here. The element that will improve a game's ability to stick out visually is tasteful art direction and ample use of the available resources, not its graphical fidelity necessarily. Art styles are the real lifeblood of a convincing, alluring world. Having a distinct, effective art style can make a game more appealing, memorable, atmospheric, and tonally coherent. As I displayed with the comparison between Elden Ring and Forspoken earlier, having a powerful art style makes all the difference in having a game that is visually impressive. Beyond accentuating the beauty of various game worlds, distinct art styles and direction also have a huge impact on the visual longevity of video games. Games that strive for realism, even if they are at the top of the market at release, will inevitably become visually outdated, and they will do so significantly faster than games with strong art direction or style. This is The Legend of Zelda: Wind Waker, and this is the original Splinter Cell. Both games originally released in 2002, roughly a month apart from one another, and yet, when comparing them side by side over 2 decades later, there is a clear victor here in visual terms. These picks are not coincidental either. Splinter Cell is arguably the most graphically impressive game from 2002 in technical terms, with a moody atmosphere, impressive set pieces, and on top of all that being a big step in incorporating dynamic lighting in video games as opposed to a fixed light map. But despite Splinter Cell being state-of-the-art in 2002, quite ahead of its time actually, Wind Waker with its playful cartoonish art style still comes out on top, something that many gamers actually had mixed feelings about when the game had first launched. The pursuit of realism, no matter how advanced, will inevitably decay in the face of a strong art style. But this seems unfair, no? There's only so many titles coming out that such heavy art styles, such as Wind Waker's, would make sense tonally. But even regarding realism, art direction and style can make all the difference. The dystopic, oppressive, almost drowning world of sensations that is Cyberpunk 2077 or Ghost Runner. The dilapidated grandeur of BioShock's Rapture, endless halls echoing what once was. The muted blues and greens of The Last of Us Part 2 that showcase both the world's bleak reality but the distant, hopeful possibilities of forgiveness, regrowth, and healing. The twisting, nightmarish world of Bloodborne. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2 or Ghost of Tsushima might seem only to boast realism, but even there, the heavily exaggerated color palettes and overly lush environments make all the difference compared to something like the Mafia remake from the same year. Art direction matters. Earlier, I said that, for the most part, graphics do not have a direct effect on gameplay. This is the part where they do. Although you may not think of heads-up displays and menus immediately when graphics are mentioned, they are still part of the visual design of a game and have a significant impact on a player's experience. I'll start with the obvious part of this discussion, that being user interface. In my mind, there's two criteria for good UI design: non-obtrusive on gameplay, and simple and quick to convey information. Let's start with menus here. Now, by nature, menus are designed to contain lots of information, and the main thing I look for in menus is being able to quickly find what I'm looking for, which often boils down to the developer's ability to organize a menu into sections and place them in the order that the most typically relevant information can be found the fastest. For example, Call of Duty. The main menu from the original Modern Warfare is nothing super special. It's a static image with some smoke effects rolling in the background, a main menu theme, and a few tiles that, among other things, allow you to play the single-player campaign, play arcade mode against bots, edit your settings and control schemes, or play multiplayer. Like I said, it's nothing special, but the key here is that it works well and it works quickly. I immediately know where to go and what to press to get to any given mode or submenu. Now, let's compare that to the 2019 reboot of Modern Warfare. Can't be that bad, right? The other side of this conversation is heads-up displays, meaning all the information on your screen during gameplay. Again, what I'm looking for here is quickly obtainable information that doesn't block my view of the game. Let's take Assassin's Creed Unity, for example, or really most of the Assassin's Creed games. I mean, this game, Unity in particular, is gorgeous, especially for 2014, and is just yet another example of the power of art direction. Now, this footage here that you see is with the heads-up display off. And when we do turn it on, oh no, half of your screen is covered in random garbage. Love to see it. Then there's the opposite side of this spectrum, where games try to be cinematic and sleek, but in the process take away vital information. Here's Splinter Cell 1 from earlier again. Not much on the screen to block your view of gameplay, and what's there is very useful, particularly this shadow meter, which tells you how hidden your character is in his current position. Move 4 years later though, And now we're back to the Stone Age, and you have to look at the protagonist's neck to tell you when you're going to be spotted. And the worst part about this is that it's not even a meter anymore, but just 3 colors, so you don't know where you are on the spectrum at any given time. This also provides a great segue into the second part of this section on UI. Splinter Cell Double Agent went to such lengths to remove vital information, not just in an attempt to be more cinematic, but also for the ever sought-after immersion factor. It's no secret that minimal UI design can make all the difference in helping a player become absorbed in a game world. Now, a lot of the work is just going from this to this, but the best efforts at immersion through UI design to me come from design based around keeping players out of menus. My 2 favorite examples of this come from Far Cry 2 and Metro Exodus. Both of these are games that are absolutely uncompromising in their visions of the harshness of their worlds, and through the omission of most every menu I can think of that might be in a game, both games immerse you more quickly than almost any other than I can think of. Wanna take a look at the map and get your bearings? Your character will pull out a physical, mostly unannotated map for you to study. Forgot what your objective is? Turn the map over. Enemies are not marked by binoculars or optics, so it's up to you to pick them out from the environment. Even crafting is done by taking your backpack physically from your back and making items. All of this replaces menus that otherwise could have been quite convoluted, meaning that the only time you're looking at a menu is when the game has been paused, which will only ever be a couple times per session, leading to a completely uninterrupted experience. And with that, we reach the final section of this video. Despite everything I've just said, the unfortunate truth is that lots of people in the past, and still today, evaluate a game simply by looking at a single screenshot. And while I've just spent a decent bit of time explaining that art direction can make a huge difference in what someone's reaction will be to that screenshot, oftentimes gamers are content to worship at the pedestal of photorealism, and if a game doesn't look like it will allow them to cook a ribeye on their PC, they don't want it. And who's to blame them when so much of video game marketing is based around cutting-edge graphics? This creates a problem though. Nowadays, I hear lots of talk about developers being chained down by the limitations of last-generation hardware. And from a purely theoretical and technological standpoint, this might be true, but with the expectations of the gaming industry as it is now, developers at the top of the market are starting to become confined by newer hardware, rather than freed. That might not make much sense right now, but bear with me here. With new and improving hardware in progressing console generations, and better hardware coming out all the time for PCs, the expectation is that games will be running more smoothly than ever, and looking better than ever as well. As a AAA development company going for more photorealistic graphics, this means that developers have to spend more and more time and manpower towards fulfilling graphical requests that, while they can result in prettier game worlds, can also result in worse games. Unless you're a huge developer that can delay indefinitely, the combination of the gaming market as it is and unflinching development deadlines means that devs are expected to release objectively higher quality products in the same periods of time from years ago. The race towards improving graphics, which is moving in minuscule jumps by now, is taking away development time and resources from all other aspects of games, which is confining in not one, but 2 ways. Firstly, as I outlined in earlier parts of this video, not every game needs hyper-realistic graphics, and pursuit of this has the potential to harm the tone and atmosphere of some releases. Secondly, and much more importantly, the amount of manpower going towards graphics nowadays is absurd, and it means that less budget proportionately than ever is going towards creating functional and deep mechanical systems to engage with as a player. This culture of games coming out unfinished becoming a more common occurrence in the gaming market as this graphics race reaches a peak is also no coincidence. Whether good or bad, this phenomenon is one that is preying on games now more than ever. Anthem, Far Cry 6, Cyberpunk 2077, Fallout 76, Assassin's Creed Unity, No Man's Sky, Marvel's Avengers, and most recently Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and more are to come. And the worst thing is, some of these games are actually fantastic now that they've been out for a decent while and developers have had the extra time to work on them. Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the best games I've played in recent memory. Unity, while still somewhat buggy, is now one of the most popular Assassin's Creed titles within the fanbase. And No Man's Sky has had perhaps the largest and most dramatic revival of any game ever, alongside the likes of Battlefront 2. The conundrum is between creating impressive graphics or creating worthwhile games, and while these objectives are often both met, it is becoming ever more common for graphics to outweigh everything else. So basically, what I mean to say with all this is go and buy an indie game every once in a while. So, thank you all for watching this video. If you'd like to see more videos in the future, please do like the video, subscribe, and share it to your friends so that we can grow this channel. As I always say, these videos are hard to make and I really appreciate the support. For this video especially, as it has been probably the most arduous project I've worked on yet for Root Beer Float. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Hopefully you learned something, and hopefully you're having a good day today. And if you're not, I hope that this video helped you on the journey to making it a better one. I will be seeing you all in the next video, but until then, goodbye.